Morning, you're watching Sky News. On the day the world lost a true sporting legend.
I'm young, I'm handsome, I'm fast, I'm pretty, and can't possibly be beat.
I saw Sonny Liston a few days ago, Cash.
Ain't he ugly? If you like to lose your money, be a fool and bet on Sonny. I told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. I am the king of the world.
Hold it.
I'm pretty.
Hold it, you're not that pretty.
I'm a bad man. I shook up the world.
Yeah, the world of sport lost an icon today. A one-off, true one-off. Muhammad Ali, the Louisville Lip, the greatest who took on all comers, and he beat them.
I beat him the first round. I beat him pretty good the second round. The third round, I beat him real bad. The sixth round, I really put it on him. And then about the seventh round, I hit him in the side real hard, and he kind of fell to me. And then when he fell on me, he said, "That's all you got, George?" I'm thinking, yep, that's about it.
And the boxing was only half of the story. He was a man who transcended his sport like no other. A life of controversy perhaps out of the ring, but a man too of deep principle.
Facing machine gun fire that day, I will face it before denouncing Elijah Muhammad and the religion of Islam. I'm ready to die.
Here was a guy who stood up for his own convictions in the face of tremendous pressure and proved in the end that his positions were correct.
Well, we had, I suppose, seen it coming, but nonetheless, a real shock to be talking about the death early this morning of perhaps the greatest sportsman of all time. Coming up, reaction from at home and abroad. But first, Sky's Geraint Hughes looks back on the extraordinary life of simply the greatest.
I must be the greatest. I told the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
Muhammad Ali will be remembered as one of the greatest sportsmen in history.
There's never been a fighter like him, and there never will be again.
A wonderful athlete, a wonderful boxer, but I think most of all a wonderful human being.
Ali dazzled the world with his showmanship, shuffle and wit.
I saw Sonny Liston a few days ago, Cash.
Ain't he ugly?
Ali was born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. in Louisville, Kentucky on January the 17th, 1942. After his bicycle was stolen, Clay began boxing when he was 12. He won 2 national titles before taking Olympic gold in Rome in 1960, when he was just 18. It's rumoured he threw his medal into the Ohio River after he was refused service at a white-only restaurant on his return to the US. On October the 29th, 1960, Cassius Clay won his first professional fight, a 6-round decision over Tony Hunsucker. From his second fight, he trained under Angelo Dundee in Miami. Flash, brash and cocky, he burst onto the scene.
A dynamite right sends Archie Moore crashing to the floor.
He became the Louisville Lip, which wasn't to everyone's taste.
I'm young, I'm handsome, I'm fast, I'm pretty, and can't possibly be beat.
Let me see you close your mouth and just keep it closed.
Well, you know that's impossible.
No, keep it closed.
You know that's impossible. I'm the greatest.
British fans first saw Clay when Henry Cooper knocked him down with a famous left hook at the end of the 4th round at Highbury in 1963. Angelo Dundee infamously brought Clay time in the corner, and Cooper, who was cut badly, was stopped in the 5th. Clay constantly called out the much-feared world heavyweight champion Sonny Liston, and the match was made for February 1964. At the weigh-in, Ali, who had dubbed Liston the Big Ugly Bear, declared that he would float like a butterfly and sting like a bee.
If you like to lose your money, be a fool and bet on Sonny.
Ali was a huge underdog, but once again he was spot on, and Liston retired in his corner after 6 rounds in Miami Beach.
I must be the greatest. I told the world. I talk to God every day. I am the king of the world.
Hold it.
I'm pretty.
Hold it, you're not that pretty.
I'm a bad man. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
At the time, the US was a volatile place, with the assassination of President Kennedy, the acceleration of the Vietnam War, and the fight for civil rights. Clay announced his allegiance to the Black Muslim movement, the Nation of Islam, and Muhammad Ali was born.
Cassius Clay is a name no more, is that right?
Yes, sir. It's Muhammad Ali.
In May 1965, Ali knocked out Liston in the first round of their rematch with what became known as the Phantom Punch. There's long been debate about whether the innocuous right genuinely hurt Liston or whether he threw the fight. In November that year, Ali stopped the former champion Floyd Patterson in 12, but early in 1966, his differences with the US government over Vietnam began to affect his career. Ali was now unpromotable in the US and took his title on the road, successfully defending it 9 times, including a 6-round stoppage against Henry Cooper at Wembley and a 3rd-round knockout of fellow Brit Brian London.
Muhammad Ali is still the undefeated world heavyweight champion and looks like he's at his brilliant best.
He was just extraordinarily fast. These movements were very, very good. I wish I'd have been as good as him.
Arguably, Ali lost the best years of his career. The New York Commission had stripped him of his heavyweight title, but Ali had stood up for his rights.
Even if it means facing machine gun fire that day, I will face it before denouncing Elijah Muhammad and the religion of Islam. I'm ready to die.
And here was a guy who stood up for his own convictions in the face of tremendous pressure and proved in the end that his positions were correct.
Even exiled in the ring, Ali transcended the sport and was still a massive attraction.
We look at Miss America, we see white. We look at Miss World, we see white. We look at Miss Universe, we see white. Even Tyson, the king of the jungle in back Africa, he's white. Who's the heavyweight champion of the world?
By 1971, Smoking Joe Frazier was the king. Ali and Frazier that year met in Madison Square Garden. Both were undefeated, and the fight didn't disappoint. Frazier floored Ali in the 15th round and won on points. It was Ali's first defeat. After 10 wins then around the world, including victory over Joe Bugner, he was upset by a former US Marine Ken Norton on a split decision in March 1973. Norton broke Ali's jaw. He would exact revenge, and it would lead to one of the most famous sporting occasions, October 1974, Kinshasa, Zaire, the Rumble in the Jungle.
Tremendous guy, broke the barrier, gave a guy like myself an opportunity in the land of opportunity. Never could have happened without a guy like Muhammad Ali.
No one gave Ali a hope, but he proved his genius with one of the most audacious tactical plans ever, letting the huge-hitting unbeaten champion blast away while he employed his rope-a-dope strategy until Foreman had punched himself out.
I beat him the first round. I beat him pretty good the second round. The 3rd round, I beat him real bad. The 6th round, I really put it on him. And then about the 7th round, I hit him in the side real hard, and he kind of fell to me. And then when he fell on me, he said, "That's all you got, George?" I'm thinking, yep, that's about it.
In the 8th round, Ali knocked Foreman out to regain his crown. It was more than 7 years since he'd been stripped of his title.
People feared for his life that night, and yet he came through victorious. He came through in a style that nobody would ever thought he would do, and he proved everybody wrong.
I told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time.
Soon afterwards, Ali accepted a 3rd fight with Joe Frazier in the Philippines. The Thriller in Manila in October 1975 was an absolute epic. Frazier was pulled out at the end of the 14th by trainer Eddie Futch.
It's all over!
Both had given everything. After that fight, a decline in Ali's physical and mental well-being was noticeable. Even so, it was a huge surprise in 1978 when Leon Spinks beat Ali over 15 rounds. At the age of 36, Ali was a former champion. Later that year, though, Ali rewrote the record books, beating Spinks in a rematch. Ali would lose to Larry Holmes and Trevor Burbeck in the 1980s before in 1984 he revealed he had Parkinson's syndrome. He threw himself into charity work and became an inspiration to many.
I was 9 years old and I used to train in this gymnasium called the Resurrection Gymnasium. And who walks in? Muhammad Ali in a sweatsuit, puts on his gloves, nobody bothered him. starts hitting the heavy bag. He would kid around with everybody. We would take pictures with him. Such a wonderful guy.
This is probably the greatest day my gym's ever had. 4 hours just telling jokes, doing magic tricks, working out, hitting the heavy bag, flirting with the girls. He was the greatest.
In 1996, he had the honour of lighting the flame at the Atlanta Olympics, a courageous but emotional sight to see. Many believe his condition was a symbol of the costs involved in the hardest sport of all. Ali was married 4 times and had 9 children. One daughter, Layla, became a fighter. He, though, was without question one of the finest heavyweight boxers of all time.
I doubt if the world was to revolve on its axis for another 1,000,000 years, there'll never be another Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, ever.
He never shied from controversy, an activist as well as a sporting legend.
Every head must bow, every knee must bend, every tongue must confess, thou art the greatest of all times, Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali was indeed, by his own frank admission, the greatest.
Yeah, amazing memories of an amazing life. How great was Ali as a fighter, as a man? We're going to hear from the esteemed sports writers Kevin Garside and Simon Barnes shortly. What about the fighters themselves, though, the British ones, the impact he had on the likes of Chris Eubank, on David Haye and the new golden heavyweight, Anthony Joshua?
Great champion, great icon, and he was a global figure of the days of no social media as well, so real unique, real special. It's just how you present yourself. Don't shy away, embrace the world, embrace people. And I'm sure he found that within him and it clicked. Luckily, you get to project that through his boxing as well. So he had double whammy. He had the boxing and a larger-than-life character as well. So with him, that's how he became the icon he is and the man we see him as today, the greatest. His achievements in the ring, his achievements outside of the ring, especially becoming champion in civil rights movements and so much political reasons why he shouldn't have been champion. He overcome adversity.
He was brilliant, he was bright, he was a beacon. And I suppose even from when I was a kid, I always had that in my mind about his flair. And so that vibrance, that electricity inspired me to where today I am always kind of a light because of him.
He wasn't the biggest heavyweight, but he used his feet. He had a very unusual style for that particular time. You know, he had his hands held low. You know, he moved around the ring. When everyone was standing in front of each other with their hands up, just punching each other, attacking each other, he would float around and frustrate and talk to his opponents. He'd do things that people wouldn't dream of doing in a boxing ring, and he did it, and he made it look fun, and he sort of brought a whole new audience to boxing.
Yeah, thoughts of some of the current heavyweights, and Chris Eubank too, who was looking resplendent this morning in that jacket. Still to come, we're going to have Kevin Garside and Simon Barnes, great sports writers, remembering the life of the great man. We're also going to hear from Stephen Finn, who's at the Epsom Derby today. They're going to be paying tribute to Muhammad Ali there as well, and we shall be looking back. You can't get enough of these pictures, can you, really? The life of a real legend. Never date these pictures. More on the way.
I'm young, I'm handsome, I'm fast, I'm pretty, and can't possibly be beat.
I saw Sonny Liston a few days ago, Cassius.
Ain't he ugly? If you like to lose your money, be a fool and bet on Sonny. I told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. I am the king of the world.
Hold it.
I'm pretty.
Hold it, you're not that pretty.
I'm a bad man. Wait. I shook up the world.
Muhammad Ali, who died at the age of 74 this morning in Arizona. Legendary heavyweight, an icon who really did transcend his sport. And we're paying tribute today. We've got Kevin Garside, sports writer, with us today. Kevin, as we heard those words there, you were almost reciting the poetry because we know them so well.
Yeah, I remember it, you know, and shook up the world, and he's still doing it, even in death. Bless him.
Yeah, and he was the self-proclaimed greatest, which we all agree with. But there are people who think he maybe wasn't the greatest boxer of all time, because Sugar Ray Robinson had fought 131 times and lost only once. Ali lost 5 in 61. And yet, when you examine the whole package, not even close. The greatest, not just the boxer of all time, but the greatest sportsman of all time.
Well, of course, and we didn't see Sugar Ray, did we? I mean, if you ask Ali who the greatest boxer of all time was, he will tell you it was Sugar Ray, and all his dance moves came from that angle. But what we found here was a fighter who came upon us when television came upon us, and it was broadcast into our homes. Sugar Ray never had that. And then he also had the political dimension, where he leapt off the front page as well as the back page, and that just transformed changed the world, as he said. Shook up.
Yeah, should we look at some of these pictures? What we got? We got the rumble in the jungle. 5 times Ali lost, but he won all the big ones. George Foreman. You know, you forget, don't you, that he went through the 60s unbeaten, and it kind of unravelled a bit when he came back. They had that 3-year gap when after he dodged the draft, if that's the right word, and then came back, and he wasn't quite the same fighter, but in the big moments, he really delivered, didn't he?
Well, arguably, you know, the boxing aficionado will tell you that we saw the best of Ali before the break. When he came back, he was past his best, but that's the bit that we remember. You know, the 3 fights with Frazier, the Foreman, Kenny Norton. All brilliant drama, because it was epic. It was an epic defeat, or it was an epic victory.
Yeah, and I remember this is the Thriller in the Manila in black and white. 3 times he fought. The one thing about Ali was, you know, if anyone beat him, he made sure he sorted it out. He lost to Frazier first of all, but then beat him twice more. He lost to Ken Norton and then beat him twice. He beat Foreman, who people said was unbeatable. He lost to Leon Spinks in 1978, and he came back and beat him. So he always had the last word. It was kind of sad, wasn't it, that it ended in a kind of, you know, a guy who shouldn't probably have been fighting. But you don't mind that so much, because the great moments were so great that you can never forget them, really.
No, and again, they were global, weren't they? And he was making a statement in the ring. I mean, all that stuff beforehand, the showman stuff, you know, I'm pretty, I'm a bad man, all this stuff. This was just never, sportsman never. Bobby Charlton didn't do that, did he? He didn't stand on the pitch as I'm a bad man. It was just amazing, just transformed the arena.
Yeah, let's hear from Sugar Ray Leonard. Another great, not Sugar Ray Robinson, but Sugar Ray Leonard, whose name came from the great man. Here's his thoughts today.
Muhammad Ali, what can I say, or what can I not say? He was my idol, he is my idol, and it's through him, watching, observing him, trying to replicate him, that made me the fighter that I am. I mean, Ali was my idol, Bruce Lee was my idol, Sugar Ray Robinson was my idol, and Elvis Presley was my idol, and I combined those 4 to make Sugar Ray Leonard.
Earlier, Kevin, I mean, it was the time of the golden period of TV, wasn't it? The Ali fights, there were 2 channels back in those days. You know, when the Ali fights, when he came on TV, country stopped, didn't it?
Well, and all the family would gather around. You know, you couldn't. There weren't 2 sets in the house. Everybody gathered around. Yeah. So even mums, daughters, kids, they all got involved. I was a child when Ali was fighting. I was just as engrossed as my father.
Yeah, I remember watching the Ken Norton fight, the first one, in my granddad's front room. Still see it now. I can picture everyone sitting there right now. Ali lost that fight, didn't he? And he fought the last round with a broken jaw. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, I do remember it. I remember, you know, but I remember the heartbreak when he lost to Frazier in Madison Square Garden, New York in '71. This was the hero coming back. Couldn't be beaten. He was telling us he couldn't be beaten. Yeah. Hold on a minute. He's on the deck. Unbelievable. But he comes back and he wins, and that's the American story, getting off the deck and
the
winning.
only man who won the world heavyweight title 3 times, and
first.
Yes, exactly. But the Henry Cooper, who is no longer with us either. It wasn't very popular, Ali, when he first came to England, was he? Why was that?
Well, because I think, you know, he was lippy, he was cheeky, he was irreverent, and all these things. And I think there was probably, if we're honest about this, there was probably a racist element, wasn't there? You know, about Ali at the time, about this black figure who was here and being brash and shouting a ball and shouting the odds. We weren't used to that. People weren't used to that.
No. So he became popular. Then he didn't join the army, and he was sort of looked down on in America. But eventually, after Vietnam settled, people thought he was right in the long run.
Well, he was proven right, wasn't he? And not only about Vietnam, but the whole civil rights movement in the United States. You know, you go to the Ali Museum in Louisville, which is a brilliant exhibit, and there's a kind of a replica, a mirror of that at the O2 in London at the moment, which I would advise everybody go and see. It's as much about the political dimension as about the boxing.
Let's go to the derby now. Speak to great cricketer, England's fast bowler Stephen Finn, looking fantastic in the top hat there today. Just to say, by the way, that before racing today, before the derby, on the Epsom Downs, 100,000 people are going to join in applause, remembering the life of the great boxer. Stephen Finn, you'll be taking part in that. I mean, you're probably too young to remember his great fights, but you'll know the character.
Yeah, it's obviously you don't get labelled the greatest ever for no reason, and so the outpour of emotion from the people who witnessed his career and the people's lives that he touched, both in and out of the ring, I think that stands testament to the type of man that he was, and for someone to have affected so many people, as I said, in and out of the ring, I think that you know, the applause of 100,000 people here today is the least that we can do.
Yeah, everybody knows about the legacy of Muhammad Ali. And your legacy, Stephen, I mean, you're in the middle of series at the moment. You're just having a bit of R&R, are you, this afternoon?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not sure, you know, if I back the wrong horses, I'm not sure it'll be quite so relaxing. But yeah, we've got a week or so off before the third test at Lord's. So yeah, trying to make the most of it and get away from it a little bit.
Yeah, Pakistan to come. Easy against Sri Lanka, really. Are you expecting something a bit more difficult next time?
I think, look, we obviously, to win 2 test matches by an innings and then by 9 wickets in the second one, I think speaks a story of the way that we've played. I think we've played very well, but I think that actually in the second half of the Durham test match, the Sri Lankans fought very hard and made us stay out there in the field for a long time to rack up a big score. So that will be their last memory of the last game, the fact that they got 400 odd against us, and that will stand them in good stead for this Lord's test match. So you know, we're going there hoping to play as good a cricket as we have done in those first 2 test matches and put Sri Lanka under pressure.
Stephen Finn in top, looking great today at Epsom. Enjoy the afternoon and best of luck for the rest of the summer. Thanks for joining us. And straight across to Simon Barnes, the former Times chief sports writer, who we've been talking to our friends here as well about, you know, the legacy of Muhammad Ali. And you remember, Simon, the time when he did first come to England, Muhammad Ali, as that brash young man, and he wasn't very popular.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's wonderful hearing all these splendid tributes to who was a man who was a terrific sportsman and a terrific person of social significance. But I remember vividly the time when he was completely hated. He was, when he came in 1963 to fight Henry Cooper, we thought this loud, boastful black man was unacceptable. We couldn't understand what was going on. He said he was pretty. How dare a black man say he was pretty? It was very hard to deal with. It was deliberately challenging. And then again, after he won the World Heavyweight Championship for the first time, he changed his slave name of Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. And this was a calculated affront to us all. And we felt it. So what's he doing? This is a declaration of war. This can't be allowed to go on. But as the revolutionary spirit of the 60s continued, then when he declined the draft, then there was a sort of different feeling. We felt that this was a revolutionary figure, something that was divisive. But we wanted to be on his side, at least the people I was with at the time. We wanted to be on his side rather than on the side of subjugation. And that was an extraordinary step for the times. And yet the more extraordinary thing happened in the following 3.5 years. Suddenly, over the course of this time, everybody was on Ali's side. Suddenly, in the course of that period, as the Vietnam War became more and more clear as a mad folly,
and indeed
it became clear that Ali was right.
He proved the doubters wrong. We're out of time. Simon, many thanks for giving us your thoughts on the greatest sportsman of all time. To Kevin Garside as well, for his thoughts on the passing of the great man. Just to repeat the news that Muhammad Ali dying at the age of 74. Much, much more to come on a momentous sporting day, really, at the top of the hour.